An unexpected distress signal. The Deep Space Monitoring Station Horizon's edge hung silent and still, a solitary outpost at the edge of human space. Lieutenant Sarah Martinez stared intently at her holographic display, dark eyes narrowed in concentration as she scanned the endless expanse of stars for any signs of activity. Suddenly, a quantum oscillation pattern caught her attention, dancing across the screen in an intricate display of light and color. In her 15 years of manning this lonely post, she had never seen anything quite like it. The signal was clearly artificial, but it didn't match any known human or alien technology in their database. "Captain Reynolds," Sarah called out, her voice steady despite the adrenaline now coursing through her veins. "You need to see this." The station's commander emerged from his office, his weathered face illuminated by the soft glow of the emergency lights. James Reynolds had been tasked with keeping watch over this sector for any signs of intelligent life beyond Earth, and now it seemed that moment had finally arrived. "What have we got, Lieutenant?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with excitement. "An unknown distress signal, sir," Sarah replied, manipulating the display to show a detailed analysis of the waveform. "It's coming from just beyond the asteroid belt, and based on the signal degradation, whatever is emitting it is in bad shape." Reynolds studied the data, his brow furrowed in concentration. He knew the grave implications of this discovery. Humanity had gone to great lengths to hide their technological advancement from the rest of the galaxy, observing in secret as other civilizations waged endless wars for power and resources. "How long until it reaches Earth orbit?" he asked, already dreading the answer. "Based on its current trajectory and speed, less than 10 hours, Sarah replied grimly. "What do you want to do, sir?" Reynolds straightened his uniform, his eyes hardening with resolve. He had sworn an oath to protect Earth and its people, and he would not fail in that duty now. "Send an alert to Terran Command," he ordered. "I want eyes on that signal at all times. And prepare a quantum drone for launch, we need to know what we're dealing with." As Sarah hastened to carry out his orders, Reynolds turned back to the holographic display, watching as the unknown signal pulsed like a heartbeat against the starry backdrop. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, that the arrival of this distress call would change the course of human history forever. Little did he know just how right he was. On the other side of that signal, a desperate crew of alien explorers clung to life, their ship shattered and their supplies dwindling. They had come seeking knowledge and adventure, but had found only disaster in the cold depths of space. Now, their fate rested in the hands of a species they had never encountered before, a species that had learned to survive by hiding in plain sight. As Reynolds watched the signal flicker and dance, he couldn't help but wonder, would this be the day that humanity finally stepped out of the shadows and into the galactic spotlight? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the universe would never be the same again. A daring rescue plan. Admiral Lena Chavez stared at the quantum entanglement display in front of her, the images of Earth's military and political leaders flickering in the dim light of the Lunar Command Center. Just minutes ago, they had received word of the alien distress signal detected near Jupiter, and now the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. "What do we know about the ship?" Chavez asked, her voice steady despite the tension crackling through the room. "It appears to be a long-range explorer, likely from the Zaran Empire," replied Dr. Mikhail Petrov, Earth's foremost expert on extraterrestrial civilizations. "Based on our limited data, they're a relatively peaceful species, but technologically advanced. Probably here on a scientific mission." General Anatoly Volkov snorted derisively. "Peaceful or not, we can't risk them discovering our true capabilities. I say we send a stealth frigate to finish the job and eliminate any evidence." Chavez held up a hand, silencing the general's objections. "We didn't come this far by throwing away our principles at the first sign of trouble. There's got to be another way." For a long moment, silence reigned in the command center as Earth's brightest minds grappled with an impossible dilemma. To reveal themselves now could invite untold chaos and conflict, undoing centuries of careful isolation. But to abandon the Zoran crew to their fate went against everything humanity claimed to stand for. Suddenly, a soft chime echoed through the room, and a new face appeared on the display, Dr. Elena Sato, head of the Terran Science Council. "I may have a solution," she said, her voice calm and measured. "What if we mount a rescue mission, but disguise our true capabilities? Make it look like we're a primitive civilization who just happened to stumble across their distress signal?" Volkov scoffed. "And how exactly do you propose we pull that off? Their ship is light years beyond anything a primitive species could build." But Chavez was intrigued. "Go on, Doctor. What did you have in mind?" Sato leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "We send a ship that looks basic on the outside, but is equipped with our most advanced stealth and jamming technology. Rig up some crude-looking repair drones and life support modules, and make it seem like we're barely keeping their ship together with duct tape and prayers." Petrov nodded slowly, catching on to Sato's plan. "We could leak some old Earth transmissions on primitive frequencies, make it look like we're just starting to explore the stars. Maybe even have our crew use some outdated jargon and cultural references to really sell the illusion." Chavez felt a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth as the pieces fell into place. It was a daring gambit, but if it worked, it could buy Earth the time and goodwill they needed to navigate this new galactic landscape. "All right, people, let's make this happen," she said, rising to her feet. "I want our best engineers working on the disguised ship and our most talented linguists and cultural experts coaching the rescue crew. We launch in 6 hours." As the meeting disbanded and the holographic faces winked out one by one, Chavez turned to face the large observation window that dominated the command center. Beyond the reinforced glass, the blue-green crescent of Earth hung suspended in the starry void, a fragile oasis of life in an uncaring universe. For centuries, humanity had huddled in the shadows, watching and waiting as the great powers of the galaxy waged their endless wars. They had seen civilizations rise and fall, empires crumble to dust, all while Earth's cities grew and its people prospered in secret. But now, fate had dealt them a new hand, and the time for hiding was over. One way or another, humanity would have to step out onto the galactic stage and make their mark. And Chavez would be damned if she let fear or caution hold them back. As she watched the rescue ship launch from its hidden lunar base, a sleek needle of metal and composites wrapped in a crude disguise, Chavez felt a thrill of exhilaration run down her spine. This was it, the moment where everything changed. Where the future of her species would be decided by the actions of a brave few. She just hoped they were ready for what came next. Because out there in the cold depths of space, a wounded alien ship and its desperate crew awaited salvation, unaware that their fate and the fate of two mighty civilizations were about to collide. And watching from the shadows, ancient eyes narrowed in calculation as a dozen other species took note of this strange new player on the galactic board. Some saw opportunity, others merely another pawn to be manipulated or consumed. But all sensed that change was coming, a great shift in the balance of power that had held for eons. The age of human ascendancy had begun, and the universe would tremble before its might. As the disguised ship hurtled through the void, its crew steeled themselves for the trials ahead. They were the best and brightest Earth had to offer, scientists, soldiers, diplomats, all united in common purpose. At their head stood Captain Ava Simmons, her eyes hard as diamonds as she studied the holographic display of their target. The Zoran ship hung before them like a wounded beast, its hull cracked and pitted from some unknown calamity. "Remember your training," she told her crew, her voice ringing with quiet authority. "We're here to save lives, but we're also here to protect our own. Stick to the script, sell the primitive angle, and above all, don't let them see our true face." Around her, heads nodded in grim determination as hands flew over consoles and readouts, preparing for the delicate dance of deception that lay ahead. In the ship's hold, the repair drones and life support modules lay in wait, their crude exteriors belying the cutting-edge technology within. To the Zorans, they would appear as the efforts of a young species taking its first tentative steps into the cosmos. But the truth was far more dangerous. For within those humble machines lay the seeds of humanity's future, the tools and weapons that would one day reshape the very fabric of the universe. As the distance between the two ships dwindled to nothing, Ava felt her heart begin to race. This was the moment of truth, the point of no return. In a few short minutes, the fate of two species would be decided, and the course of galactic history would be forever altered. She just prayed that humanity was ready for the storm that was about to break. The price of mercy. The battered hull of the Zoran Explorer loomed before the disguised human ship, a twisted mass of shattered metal and flickering lights that hung motionless against the starry backdrop. Captain Ava Simmons felt a twinge of empathy for the alien crew trapped within, their lives hanging by a thread as they awaited rescue. But there was no time for sentiment now. Every moment counted, and the slightest misstep could doom not only the Zorans, but humanity's carefully laid plans as well. Initiate docking sequence, Ava ordered, her voice calm and measured. And remember, we're primitive but resourceful. Make it look good. The human ship shuddered as the docking clamps engaged, the magnetic locks straining to maintain their grip on the damaged Zoran hull. In the airlock, the rescue team readied themselves, their pressure suits adorned with crude patches and improvised tools. As the airlock hissed open, they stepped into the darkness of the alien ship, their helmet lights casting eerie shadows across the twisted corridors. The air was thick with the acrid scent of burnt circuitry and spilled coolant, and the only sound was the creaking of stressed metal and the faint hiss of escaping atmosphere. Life signs detected ahead, reported Lieutenant Marcus Kim, his voice tinged with excitement and fear. Looks like the crew is holed up in the central compartment. Ava nodded, motioning for the team to advance. They moved cautiously, picking their way through the debris-strewn passageways, their crude-looking tools at the ready. As they approached the central compartment, a flicker of movement caught Ava's eye. She turned, her heart racing, as a tall, slender figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Zoran, its iridescent skin shimmering in the dim light. It stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 spindly arms and a long, sinuous neck that swayed gently as it regarded the humans with unblinking, golden eyes. "Peace, strangers," it said, its voice a melodic trill that seemed to echo in Ava's bones. "I am Commander Zolari of the Zoran Exploration Corps. We are grateful for your aid." Ava swallowed hard, forcing herself to remember her training. "I'm Captain Ava Simmons of the Earth ship, Endeavor," she said, stumbling over the outdated name they had chosen for their vessel. "We picked up your distress signal and came to help." Zolari tilted its head, a gesture that Ava's cultural briefings had indicated was a sign of curiosity. "Earth? We have not heard of this world before. Your technology is intriguing." Ava fought the urge to wince. The Zorans were no fools, and even their crude disguise couldn't completely hide the sophistication of their ship and equipment. "We're a young species," she said, trying to project an air of humility. "Just starting to explore the stars. But we couldn't ignore a call for help." Zolari trilled softly, a sound that Ava's translator implant rendered as a thoughtful hum. "Your compassion does you credit, Captain Simmons. Come, let me show you to my crew." The Zoran commander led them into the central compartment, where a dozen more of its kind huddled around flickering consoles and sputtering life support systems. Many were injured, their iridescent skin marred by deep gashes and ugly burns. Ava's medical team leapt into action, triaging the wounded and distributing supplies with practiced efficiency. But even as they worked, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Zorans were too calm, too composed for a species on the brink of annihilation. And the damage to their ship, while extensive, seemed almost too perfect, as if it had been staged for maximum effect. Ava's suspicions only grew as Zolari led her to the ship's primary data core, a towering monolith of crystal and metal that pulsed with an eerie, inner light. "Our mission logs and scientific data are stored here," the Zoran commander said, its voice strangely flat. "I fear they may be corrupted by the damage to our systems." Ava hesitated, torn between her desire to help and the nagging sense that something was very wrong. But before she could voice her concerns, Zolari pressed a long, slender finger to the data core's control panel. Instantly, the compartment was filled with a blinding flash of light and a deafening roar that sent Ava and her team stumbling back in shock. Alarms blared and warning lights flashed as the human ship's systems registered a massive surge of energy emanating from the Zoran vessel. "What have you done?" Ava demanded, rounding on Zolari with fury in her eyes. But the Zoran commander merely stood there, its golden eyes fixed on the human captain with an expression that could only be described as triumph. "We have done what was necessary, Captain Simmons," it said, its voice cold and hard. "For the survival of our species, and the downfall of yours." Ava's blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. The Zoran distress signal, the staged damage to their ship, the calculated vulnerability they had projected, it had all been a trap. A trap designed to lure humanity out of hiding, to expose their true capabilities to the watching galaxy. And like fools, they had walked right into it. Ava's mind raced as she tried to understand the full scope of the Zoran's plan. Had they known about humanity's secret all along? Were they working with other species to bring Earth to its knees? But there was no time for questions now. The Zoran ship was powering up, its engines thrumming with an ominous intensity. Ava knew that if they were allowed to escape, they would carry with them the knowledge of humanity's deception, and with it, the seeds of their destruction. She had to act fast, had to find a way to contain this disaster before it was too late. But as she looked around at her crew, their faces etched with fear and confusion, she realized the terrible price they would have to pay. For in the game of galactic politics, mercy was a weakness that could not be afforded. And if humanity was to survive, they would have to be willing to do whatever it took, no matter the cost. With a heavy heart, Ava gave the order to seal the airlock and detach from the Zoran ship. They would have to leave the alien crew to their fate, trapped and helpless as their vessel burned up in the unforgiving depths of space. It was a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her days, a burden of guilt and regret that she would carry with her to the grave. But in that moment, as she watched the Zoran ship disappear into the void, Ava knew that she had no choice. For the survival of her species, for the future of all humanity, she would have to be the one to make the hard choices, to bear the weight of the impossible decisions that lay ahead. And as she turned back to her crew, their faces grim with the knowledge of what they had done, Ava steeled herself for the long road ahead. The galaxy was a harsh and unforgiving place, and if humanity was to claim its rightful place among the stars, they would have to be harsher still. The age of human ascendancy had begun, but the price of their rise would be paid in blood and tears, in the shattered dreams and broken promises of a species that had dared to reach for the heavens. And in the darkness of space, 1,000 alien eyes watched and waited, eager to see if this upstart race would soar to new heights, or burn in the fires of their own ambition. The echoes of betrayal. The silence hung heavy in the Lunar Command Center as Admiral Chavez watched the footage of the Zoran ship's destruction for the 100th time. The grainy images, captured by the rescue team's helmet cameras, showed the alien vessel convulsing in its death throes, its hull shattered by the explosive decompression that had claimed the lives of its crew. It was a sight that would be burned into the memory of every human who witnessed it, a terrible reminder of the price they had paid for their deception. Beside her, Dr. Sato and General Volkov stood in grim silence, their faces etched with the same mixture of horror and determination that Chavez herself felt. They had all known the risks when they embarked on this path, had all understood the sacrifices that would be required to keep humanity safe. But understanding and acceptance were two very different things, and as Chavez looked around at the haunted eyes of her colleagues, she knew that the weight of what they had done would stay with them forever. "We had no choice," she said, her voice sounding hollow even to her own ears. "The Zorans would have exposed us to the rest of the galaxy. We had to protect our people." Volkov nodded grimly, his jaw clenched tight. "We did what was necessary, Admiral. The Zorans were a threat, and we eliminated them." But Dr. Sato shook her head, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. At what cost, General? We betrayed our own principles, our own humanity. How can we claim to be better than the species we fear, when we so readily resort to murder and deception? Chavez sighed, feeling the weight of command pressing down on her like a physical burden. We can't afford to second-guess ourselves now, Doctor. What's done is done, and we have to move forward. She turned back to the display, where a new set of images had appeared. They showed the wreckage of the Zoran ship, now little more than a twisted mass of metal and debris, drifting through the void. We need to send a recovery team, she said, her voice hardening with resolve. We can't leave any evidence behind. And we need to start preparing for the fallout. Volkov frowned, his brow furrowing in confusion. Fallout? The Zorans are dead, Admiral. There's no one left to tell their tale. But Chavez shook her head, a grim smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. The Zorans were not alone, General. They had allies, friends, trading partners. Sooner or later, someone will come looking for them, and when they do, they will find the wreckage of their ship, and the evidence of our involvement. Dr. Sato's eyes widened in realization. The rescue team, their equipment, their suits. It's all stamped with human markings, human technology. We left a trail a mile wide. Chavez nodded, her gaze distant as she contemplated the enormity of the task before them. We need to get ahead of this, fast. We need to start seeding the galactic information networks with false leads, rumors, and disinformation. We need to make it look like the Zorans were killed by someone else, anyone else. Volkov's face split into a predatory grin. I have some ideas on that front, Admiral. A few well-placed whispers in the right ears, and we can have the whole galaxy chasing ghosts. But even as they set to work, Chavez couldn't shake the feeling of unease that coiled in her gut. They had crossed a line today, a line that could never be uncrossed. And as she watched the recovery team's ships disappear into the void, she couldn't help but wonder what other lines they might be forced to cross in the days to come. For the universe was a vast and dangerous place, filled with wonders and horrors beyond human imagining. And as humanity took its first steps onto the galactic stage, they would find themselves beset on all sides by enemies and rivals, each with their own agendas and ambitions. To navigate this treacherous landscape, they would need to be smart, ruthless, and above all, united in their purpose. They would need to be willing to do whatever it took to ensure the survival and prosperity of their species, no matter the cost. But as Chavez looked around at the faces of her colleagues, she couldn't help but wonder if they were truly up to the task. They had already sacrificed so much, had already compromised their own values and beliefs in the name of security. How much more would they be willing to give up? How much further would they be willing to go, to protect the fragile flame of human civilization against the cold and unforgiving darkness of the cosmos? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain, the path they had chosen would not be an easy one. It would be a road paved with difficult choices and painful sacrifices, a road that would test the very limits of their resolve and their humanity. And as humanity set out on this great and terrible journey, they would do so with the knowledge that they were not alone. For in the shadows of the galaxy, ancient eyes watched and waited, their intentions as inscrutable as the stars themselves. Some saw humanity as a threat to be contained, a dangerous upstart race that needed to be put in its place. Others saw them as a potential ally, a valuable pawn in the great game of galactic politics. But all knew that the rise of humanity would change the face of the universe forever, for better or for worse. And as the first ripples of that change began to spread across the stars, the fate of 1,000 worlds hung in the balance. On the bridge of the recovery ship, Captain Simmons stared out at the wreckage of the Zoran vessel, her heart heavy with the weight of what she had done. She had made a choice in the heat of the moment, a choice that had condemned an entire crew to a cold and lonely death. It was a choice that would haunt her for the rest of her days, a burden of guilt and regret that she would carry with her always. But even as she mourned the lives she had taken, Ava knew that she would do it again in a heartbeat. For the stakes were simply too high, the consequences of failure too catastrophic to contemplate. Humanity had set out on a dangerous path, a path that would require them to be ruthless and uncompromising in the face of their enemies. And if she had to bear the weight of that ruthlessness, to become the monster that humanity needed her to be, then so be it. For in the end, all that mattered was the survival of her species, the continuation of the human story. And if that meant sacrificing her own soul, her own humanity, then it was a price she was willing to pay. As the recovery team set to work, sifting through the debris for any trace of human involvement, Ava closed her eyes and whispered a silent prayer for the souls of the Zoran crew. They had been innocent pawns in a game they didn't even know they were playing, victims of a conflict that had been raging since before they were born. But their sacrifice would not be in vain. For in their death, they had bought humanity the time and the secrecy they needed to secure their place in the galaxy. And as long as Ava drew breath, she would make sure that their loss was not forgotten. For the universe was a harsh and unforgiving place, and only the strong and the ruthless would survive. And if humanity was to claim its rightful place among the stars, they would need to be the strongest and most ruthless of them all. The age of human ascendancy had begun, and the galaxy would tremble before the fury of their rise. The shadows of doubt. In the weeks that followed the destruction of the Zoran ship, a sense of unease settled over the Terran alliance like a dark and foreboding cloud. The official story, carefully crafted by Admiral Chavez and her inner circle, spoke of a tragic accident, a catastrophic malfunction that had claimed the lives of the alien crew. But whispers of a different tale soon began to circulate through the shadows of human space, whispers of betrayal and murder, of a desperate act of self-preservation that had condemned an entire species to oblivion. At first, the rumors were dismissed as baseless speculation, the idle chatter of conspiracy theorists and malcontents. But as more and more pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, even the most ardent supporters of the alliance found themselves questioning the official narrative. For the wreckage of the Zoran ship, now scattered across a dozen systems, told a very different story than the one presented by Chavez and her cohorts. The scars of battle were evident on every twisted piece of metal, every shattered shard of crystal, the unmistakable signs of a vessel that had been deliberately targeted and destroyed. And then there were the rumors of a secret research facility on the fringes of human space, a place where the brightest minds of the Alliance were said to be working on a project of unimaginable scope and ambition. A project that, if the whispers were to be believed, held the key to humanity's future, and perhaps, to its downfall. As the doubts and questions continued to mount, Admiral Chavez found herself under increasing pressure from all sides. The other species of the galaxy, once content to ignore the upstart humans, now watched their every move with wary eyes and twitching trigger fingers. And within the alliance itself, factions began to form and splinter, as different groups vied for power and influence in the face of the growing crisis. Some called for a return to isolationism, for humanity to withdraw from the galactic stage and focus on strengthening their own defenses. Others argued for a more aggressive stance, for the Terran fleets to take the fight to their enemies before they could strike first. But through it all, Chavez held fast to her course, her eyes fixed on the horizon and her heart steeled against the doubts that gnawed at her soul. For she knew that the path she had chosen was the only one that offered any hope of long-term survival for her species. The galaxy was a vast and dangerous place, filled with ancient powers and hidden threats that humanity was only just beginning to comprehend. And if they were to have any chance of navigating this treacherous landscape, they would need to be united in their purpose, unwavering in their resolve. But even as she worked tirelessly to hold the alliance together, Chavez couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that some vital piece of the puzzle was still missing. And as she dug deeper into the secrets of the Zoran ship and the mysterious research project, she began to uncover a web of lies and deceit that threatened to unravel everything she had fought so hard to build. At the heart of it all was Dr. Elena Sato, the brilliant scientist who had first proposed the idea of the secret research facility. Sato had always been a maverick, a visionary who pushed the boundaries of what was possible in her relentless pursuit of knowledge and power. But now, as Chavez delved deeper into her activities, she began to suspect that the doctor's ambitions went far beyond the advancement of human science. For the project she was working on, the one that had consumed her every waking moment for the past decade, was unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen before. It was a weapon, a tool of unimaginable destructive power that harnessed the fundamental forces of the universe itself. A device that, if unleashed, could reshape the very fabric of reality and grant its wielder the power to bend the cosmos to their will. And as Chavez stared into the abyss of Sato's creation, she felt a cold and terrible dread settle over her like a shroud. For she knew that if this weapon were to fall into the wrong hands, if its awesome power were to be turned against the fragile balance of the galaxy, then all the sacrifices she had made, all the lives she had taken, would be for nothing. The fate of humanity, and perhaps of all life in the universe, hung in the balance. And as Chavez steeled herself for the battle to come, she knew that she would need to be stronger, smarter, and more ruthless than ever before if she was to have any hope of emerging victorious. For in the shadows of the galaxy, ancient eyes watched and waited, their intentions as inscrutable as the stars themselves. And as humanity stumbled ever closer to the brink of annihilation, the stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of creation. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Chavez stared out into the infinite depths of space, her heart heavy with the weight of the choices that lay before her. She had sacrificed so much to get to this point, had compromised her own values and beliefs in the name of the greater good. But now, as she faced the prospect of unleashing a weapon that could destroy entire worlds, she found herself questioning everything she had ever fought for. Was this truly the only way to ensure humanity's survival? Or was she simply perpetuating a cycle of violence and destruction that would consume them all in the end? She closed her eyes, her mind racing with the echoes of the lives she had taken, the blood she had spilled in the name of her cause. And in that moment, she made a decision that would change the course of history forever. She would not be the one to unleash this weapon, to cross the final line that separated humanity from the monsters they feared. She would find another way, a path that did not require the sacrifice of innocent lives or the destruction of entire civilizations. And as she gave the order to stand down, to dismantle the research project and destroy all traces of its existence, she felt a sense of peace settle over her for the first time in years. For she knew that, whatever the cost, she had made the right choice. The path ahead would not be easy, and the challenges they faced would be greater than ever before. But as long as humanity held fast to their principles, as long as they remembered the value of compassion and mercy in the face of adversity, then there was still hope for a better future. And as the Terran fleet set out into the unknown, ready to face whatever trials and tribulations the universe had in store, Chavez knew that they would do so with their heads held high and their hearts filled with the unquenchable spirit of human determination. For the age of human ascendancy had only just begun, and the greatest chapters of their story were yet to be written.